morning, everyone. First of all, thanks to everyone that is on the panel, and it's a pleasure to share this time, and thanks for inviting us to South Summit. And welcome to this panel about bringing construction into the 21st century. We have prominent panelists here, so their names and their roles have been already introduced, but I would ask them to very briefly tell your own story, who you are, what your company does in one sentence, and what is some of the challenge or excitement of the construction or real estate industry that you feel is more promising in the next times.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jose Ojeda. I'm one of the founders of 011H. We are a design and build platform which, with a mission to accelerate the transition to a sustainable built world. And what it means is that we bring net zero buildings in half the time as conventional construction processes, and we do it at equivalent prices and with a high degree of reliability. And we do that thanks to technology. I've been in technology for more than 13 years, been in a different field. I've been doing e-commerce for a couple of companies that are quite large now. And we felt attracted to come to construction because we feel that there is an industry that hasn't been touched at all by technology, and that technology can transform it, and in particular on the field of sustainability, which, as you know, is kind of the big challenge that we have for humanity in the next 20 years. So that's what I'm in construction.
Thank you, Jose. Liam, please.
Hi. First of all, this is a super weird format, so I can't see you guys, but I'm with you virtually. I'm usually based in Silicon Valley, but I'm in Cabo San Lucas right now. So it's 4 a.m., and if I'm a little groggy, please don't hold it against me. So prior to this, I had started the U.S. office of Waze. And so I was really in logistics for many, many years. I was there for about 11 years. And it's interesting to look at the parallels between what I was doing at Waze and what we're doing with this company now. So if you look at the job site, it's a lot like a traffic jam, and that you might have thousands of people on a single job site coming and going. And just like in a small city, you have 1,000 cars going in one direction or another, and just a few dozen cars can create a traffic jam that lasts for hours. And at the scale of construction, we could be losing thousands of hours. So about 52% of rework is caused by these kind of labor inefficiencies of labor coming and going. So what CORE is doing is really focusing on what we call logistics for labor. And it's just trying to bring communication and data into a single platform so that people understand what exactly is happening on the job site, the who, what, where, when of that, and trying to make it so that people aren't falling over each other.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this intro. Please, Alejandro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alejandro, CEO of Spotahome. I'm founder. We have been around for 8 years now. What we do is we are an online booking platform for mid to long-term rentals, so average like 6 months to 12 months. That's the majority of our rentals. We have in the platform around 150,000 properties now, and we are operating in 28 countries. And the whole process, the full rental is entirely online. So now you don't need to be dealing with estate agents or doing it on the phone. You can do the entire rental process online and moving in. So we focus a lot on international people moving to different countries. And so far, we have raised a little bit over 80 million euros from some of the guys at Silicon Valley as well. But we are based here in Madrid, where we started.
Thank you, Alejandro.
I don't do construction, just a caveat. So the experts are there.
That's fine. You do real estate, which is built environment, very related, so it's going to be super positive. Thanks.
Right.
Joseph.
Nice. I'm Joseph. Great to be here. I'm co-founder and managing director of Limehome, and we're a leading European tech hospitality player and operator. And we're entirely rethinking hospitality because we have built our own technology, which allows us actually to operate every back-end process of a hotel, but also offers our guests a fully digital customer journey. And by doing so, we're able to offer an amazing experience to our guests at very low operating costs. And now we're operating already 75 locations in 4 countries, and among others, also 2 here in Madrid.
Thank you all. So now that we all know each other, I think it would be great to make a little bit of setting the stage with a few data points about where the construction industry is right now. It's an industry that, depending on how you look at it, accounts for 30 to 40% of the CO2 production globally. It's a super important sector that represents between 6 and 12% of the global GDP, depending on the region that you look at it. And it's directly connected to some of the most vibrant problems of our time. For instance, World Economic Forum is estimating that cities will absorb daily 200,000 people between now and 2030, which is massive pressure on construction on all sorts of levels. Jose was starting his presentation saying that one of the key challenges is sustainability, and I think it would be great to start the conversation there. So I would have a question, which is, how can construction become more sustainable through technology? And you can expand that as well to real estate. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we see 3 main areas that are quite major in how technology can help with this problem. Perhaps the first one, and perhaps more intuitive for tech people, is the use of data and tools to basically track, measure, and control all of the emissions. It's a pretty broken industry with a lot of actors, with a lot of activities, and there's not a lot of visibility on the decisions you make as part of that chain in terms of the implications on CO2. So therefore, technology and data in the creation of tools is critical for the management of the proactive management of that, right? Then there's been quite a lot of advancement in material, new type of materials for construction. And these are like materials that are way more advanced in terms of the carbon footprint that they offer. So for structural construction, for example, recent developments have been the development of cross-laminated timber, which has a very, very, very neutral impact. Even some people think that it has negative impact. But also new solutions that have to do with the injection of CO2 back into the cement. So that's another super exciting area. And then the third area for us, it's been the inclusion of modern manufacturing in the traditional construction process. So while traditional construction has always happened on site and with very manual processes, now there's methods that are like going from 3D printing, automated manufacturing, and that allows to have a lot less waste and also to reduce the cost of these new type of materials that have lower footprint. So these are like the 3 main areas that we're excited about.
Thank you. There's a lot of change in all of those areas in this industry. Diane, please.
First of all, I agree with everything that he just said. I think the one contribution I would add is that there's a huge workforce in the field, and then you've got the office on the other side. And usually the decisions are made from the office about which materials are going to be made. You have all of these different subcontractors that if they were actually inspired to participate in the decision-making on the materials, on even some of the processes, then I think you would have not just that top-down approach, which there aren't enough financial incentives yet for owners and developers and GCs. But if you had that also coming bottoms up, I think it's kind of a cultural shift that we can inspire and we can actually control. So I think it's about educating the field and the subcontractors, trade contractors on what those material choices are and how to advocate for them as well. And then you've got, then you've really got a groundswell, because if the subcontractors are learning how to use these new materials and new processes, then the chances of them making it through to production are much higher.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Stakeholders alignment is one of the key challenges. We might elaborate a little bit more on that in a minute. Alejandro, please.
Yeah. Well, from our side, that in our case, I think data and the use of data for actually guiding where construction should be. For example, in our case, among the 150,000 properties that we have, we do student residence dorms, apartments, rooms in shared apartments, and all those things. So we see construction companies asking us where to actually invest and build and how to build. Because if you do that, not for just a living, but for investment, they want to know what kind of properties to build. And even now, we are gathering a lot more data on having, depending on the property, what is the probability to get a rental, what is going to be the potential yield. Now we are analyzing, depending on the size of the apartment and the equipments of the apartment and the facing of the windows and all those things, the real and maximum value, so they can estimate what is going to be the yield. I think that is somewhere where we can provide, in our businesses, a lot to construction. And one thing that you guys, I don't think you guys mentioned is I was reading about workforce in construction, that it may be a challenge and a risk in the future that the work, there is not enough workforce to actually speed up construction or be at the required levels, and then also if you digitize a lot, and then so there is going to be some tension there. So I was reading about that. I'm not an expert, but
thank you. There's so much tension that we even coined a term. It's called construction skills gap, and it's about 50% in some of the market, like the UK, for instance. So yeah,
right.
Definitely a big problem. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, we are obviously also coming more from the operator side, but maybe distinguishing between making construction greener and more sustainable. I think when it comes to greener, there's a lot feasible already, but it's a lot about incentivization. And I think if we would like to reach our emission goals, like state subsidies and so forth is maybe not enough. We should be a bit more radical there. So maybe it's a solution actually that the landlords have to cover a certain percentage of the energy costs, for instance, because this would give a lot of incentives to them to build with what is already feasible. And when it comes to more sustainable, I'm a firm believer of mixed-use assets and also large developments, because I think the quite symbiotic relationship between the different asset classes, it got a bit out of balance. And we need to make sure that we do not only develop these large monolithic buildings anymore, which are easy to finance, but to make sure that also a bit outside of the Instagrammable hotspots, our cities stay lively. And this is important to have these mixed asset classes in buildings.
Thank you very much. We've spoken about educating the market, about tension between different stakeholders, and I had thought about asking you about the main challenges in the industry, but perhaps if you think about digitization, you're changing a lot of how the status quo of the previous industry and moving it to a different scenario in a way. What is your experience when bringing together stakeholders that are generally or quite often B2B with super different motivations and that have to somehow change their culture? If you could expand a little bit on that, both on the construction side and on the real estate side, that would be super interesting. Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the biggest challenges that we're encountering, because I mean, we're new to the sector and we are coming with fresh eyes, and for us, it's like surprising to see the level of disintegration and decision making. I think that you were mentioning before it's basically a very complex sector with a lot of these decision makers with different economic incentives, and it's very difficult to coordinate them all to make systemic change, right? Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why there's not innovation, there's not the degree of innovation that it should be, right? And this is one of the big areas. The other area that we've seen, it's obviously is the production model. Production model is based on a almost like 200 years ago model where everything is done pretty much like manually on the side in not the right way, and with a labor which is very specialized and is becoming more and more scarce because young generations don't want to work there, and that means that the supply side is extremely rigid. So you have a sector that cannot change the production model because people are, let's say, fragmented and not coordinating a new model, and a model that is extremely rigid, right? So these are like it's a Molotov cocktail for attending the needs of new housing that is expected. People say that in the next 30, 40 years, globally we're going to have to be like a New York.
Yeah.
I think it's every week or something like that. It's extreme, right? So these are like the big challenges that we're encountering.
Thank you, Jose. Diane?
I guess it's funny, Jose and I think, are seeing a lot of the same issues. I guess I'll focus a bit more on the workforce management piece and also the labor shortage. In the US, we have now probably a half a million jobs that are left open that are needed for this. And I just want to say that the reason that people are not wanting to come into the field, it used to be safety. For example, there were some really hard things. I feel like safety has really come a long way, and that's also in part thanks to technology. But primarily, it's perception, right? It was around in the 80s that you started seeing, plumbers with butt cracks on TV, right? And I don't know if this interprets well in Spanish, but it's really negative imagery. And so I think the media has a big role to play in it. Some of the good news, though, is that you do have lots of incentives coming right now for people to go into the trades again. And I feel like the perception is changing. So millennials, for example, they're much more interested in doing what they love. And a lot of people are comfortable working with their hands. And I think they've seen previous generations come and they are leaving four-year colleges, even though they didn't necessarily want to go, and they're having student debt, but then they end up in construction anyway. And so I think we need to look at the value of this work and understand that a couple of great things happen, right? Because construction workers used to be the heroes, right? And then they became kind of made fun of. And now they're kind of becoming even more than heroes again. If you look at the potential to be wearing exoskeletons and to be able to lift higher weights than you could before, or there's a lot of really interesting worker adaptation technology that's coming out. And as I mentioned before, these are people who are going to have a much bigger voice in sustainable choices of materials, in if you have skilled workforce that actually have good tools, and what I mean by good tools is a platform for communication and making sure that things are done in sync with this issue, then you're going to see that the costs will come down, for example, and affordable housing can be tackled through this way. And so I think it's the labor shortage combined with the management of the workforce in this very, very fragmented environment. There are two things that I'm really focused on that can make a big impact.
Thank you. Alejandro?
Yeah, that leads, it's not, well, it's a challenge and opportunity. Entrepreneurs, we always see opportunities, but then I think we got to revise also the construction in terms of the assets that you put into the public, because it's not necessarily need to be always, the same kind of apartments, the same kind of buildings, the same kind of, for example, I was reading about containers being used to be houses. It's so much cheaper. It's reused materials, whether you use metal or you do them with wood, and those are much cheaper for the buyer or the renter. And those are alternatives that would require a lot less resources in terms of workforce. It would be so much faster to build and to put in. I was reading about a project somewhere in UK that they were putting a bunch of containers and they were taking kind of the low end of the population and giving them the opportunity to live there for a very low rent. And I thought it was super smart. Instead of building the typical buildings over and over again with all the challenges that you guys mentioned, I think there is opportunity on that.
Yeah, we say that in our industry, we pretty much every time we build a building, we're doing a prototype, whereas
Yes.
all the other industries are just doing it once and then repeating. That's there are a lot of areas for opportunity there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Joseph?
Yeah, I actually see two major challenges which are holding back innovation. First, it might be a bit provocative, but I think the huge dependency on cheap financing is one factor, because like typically it gets built what gets easily financed and exited, and not necessarily what's the best use for a space. And typically financing institutions are quite conservative and rather backwards looking. Secondly, I think the biggest value driver in this industry is still access to a network and information not everyone has. And therefore, the most successful players have a certain interest in not having too much transparency in the market about cost, about yields, and so forth. And very often the players themselves don't know what comes out of it. And this is also one of the key success factors for us, that we have these data, we know in which micro-location, how much yields, how much revenues can get generated, so we can convince the landlord quite easily, showing them, this is your business case, these are the costs, do it with us.
Thank you. For this last part of the panel, I would like to ask you, as a startup or as a company, working in the built environment and in the relationship between construction and real estate, what would be the factor or the switch, or the push that you would like to see in the environment so that you can thrive better? Like, what needs to be changed, either in mindset, in structure of the market, or in collaboration between different stakeholders, so that you can actually thrive better?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, hearing to everyone, I think like the reason why we're so excited about this, right, is because we see that the decision making is not really aligned between like a chain that contains like maybe 20 parts or 15 parts, right? And the person taking decisions at the end of the chain doesn't understand the needs of the first one, right? And once that you start understanding this need, and then you have a holistic view, then you can start making significant changes on the solution, right? And then orchestrate and coordinate everyone behind that solution, right? That's our thesis. That's what we're building, right? Like, we are working very close, very deeply with our clients, understanding their needs, understanding the financing issues, understanding what the final user needs, and then basically building a platform that integrates and has the capacity to bring new solutions to the system, right?
That's it. Thank you. Jan?
Well, so much of the cost, and especially being over budget in this industry, is really about delays and about being, not being able to stick to it. And so I think look at it as kind of basic. Nothing else, we need a platform that some current people are using. I just froze there. Sorry. Did you hear that?
Yeah. If you would like to summarize what you said, kindly, thank you.
We need a single platform that people are using for their communication, because so much of very important data is getting lost. So whether it's texting that there's a new task that needs to be done, or whether it's in person printing out a schedule, that has to go away. We need to stop using WhatsApp. We need to stop using paper and get people aligned on a single platform for communication about their task management. So I think it sounds basic. It doesn't sound as cool as exoskeletons or building things on Mars, but it is one of the most important things we can do for the fragmentation of this industry. And then the second thing I would consider is we need to look at ways to verticalize the industry. And so, I think it was Joseph that mentioned, the complexity related to financing. And, I think we need to look at new models for that stack. So if you look at Bjarke Engel's new company, for example, called Neighbor, he is basically taking a Tesla approach, where you're going to be able to have like somewhat modular decisions. The financing kind of comes with it. They are the developer, they're the owner. And I think we're going to start seeing new models where we're verticalizing in this industry too, where it hasn't been the case so much in the past.
Thank you. Alejandro?
Well, for us, I think as the sellers, it's more that communication with the developer, and then being for ourselves, improve a lot more the data that we can provide, so they can have a better understanding of their yields, and if there is financing problems or challenges there, it's going to be way easier to get the financing if they already know what is going to be the yield of their investment based on platforms like ours.
Mm-hmm. Joseph?
Yeah, I can to 100% align on what has been said before. I think it's mainly the inefficiency between the different steps of the value creation, and it could be more vertically integrated partners, but in any case, it needs to be more. There need to be more transparency and also more automated processes between the different steps, which is actually quite hard because it's super local market. It's super fragmented. It's highly regulated on a local level, and this is probably one of the other levers that should be pulled.
Thank you. Well, we have a tiny bit of time. I would ask, for instance, Jose, from the perspective of it being a new type of construction company. So say, how has been your experience while dealing with your final client, which in the end is a real estate developer, and it's the figure or the type of company that brings the financing to the industry? What do you think about that relationship between part A and part B, in brief?
No, look, I think developers see these problems also, coming their way. We have conversations. They are concerned about the threat of, a change in regulation to force sustainability, and they also want to make the change, right? But I think they're victim of the existing model, and it's very hard, even if they want to push for it, they cannot reach how the industry is structured, right? So I think there's a high willingness to transform the industry and bet for this. But I think people that has been in the industry for so many years, they don't have the DNA to do it, right? So that's why platforms or companies like ours that come with fresh eyes and come with the technology background, we are more prone to affect that change, right? But I think everyone sees the same challenges. Everyone is willing to change. I think perhaps the speed of change is very different to other industries that I've worked at before, because here obviously the projects and the decisions are big and they are quite significant. For example, if they give you a building, it's a 10 million project, right? And if you don't have experience doing that, perhaps there's a time until you build the credibility, and and every project is 12 months, right? So basically, it's a slower burn type of business and environment. But I think we're making steady progress to change the industry as a whole.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, there have been different studies that put the percentage to that productivity gap between big corporates and real estate developers and other construction agents in about 20%. So that willingness actually exists, and it's one of the key forces to leverage on to sort of push the change. And you mentioned the speed of change is slow, but at the same time, the depth of change is really visible. So that's a huge opportunity for the investment world, for the entrepreneurs to change things globally, and that's the reason why, in part, probably our industry is attracting a lot of capital in the last years. So finally, I would like to thank you all and thank our audience, and finally thanks to South Summit as well for having us.